Welcome back to Season 2 of Light in the Battle, Emotional Detachment as a Tactical Advantage for Family Court. Light in the Battle is a podcast for autistic women healing from narcissistic abuse, and it is a podcast where we get clearer, calmer, and spiritually and legally harder to mess with. What I learned in my journey is that the legal advice and strategy for family court against people who make us feel confused or scared just does not land when emotions are running high. Survivors keep losing in court over and over. Then I figured it out. The safe parent has to show that they are the stable, child-focused parent, both in all the evidence that they generate, emails, texts, medical reports, and in their demeanor in court. As long as survivors show up in court frazzled with raging PTSD and resentment, and as long as they keep writing angry emails or share how mad they feel that contact has been allowed or refuse to cooperate on certain aspects, they are never going to win. Although the concerns and feelings are mostly valid, and they won't change after we achieve emotional detachment, survivors need to stop creating content for the other side to use to make them appear unstable and unsafe for the children. So I'm taking you on the journey that I traveled to get to a point where I detached completely. I cared just as much about my child's well-being. However, I got my head out of my butt, is what happened, and I worked on myself so I could get to a new and improved version, a version of myself that could play by the court's rules to show the truth and the patterns of behavior in an indisputable manner. So far in Season 2, we've covered how to understand and break the trauma bond, aka the addiction to chaos, in episode 15 and 16. This is basically suggesting ways of staying gone once you've left. We've covered PTSD, CPTSD, and how EMDR worked for me, though it doesn't work for everyone, in episode 17. Here you'll hear about the 10 impacts that EMDR has had on my life. Next, we will talk about forgiveness and how it does not mean reconciliation in episode 19. And then we'll cover codependency in autistic women, gratitude, fellowship and mentorship, surrender and grief later on in Season 2. So make sure to follow the show if you want to be able to catch all the episodes about emotional detachment as they drop. Okay, so in this episode today, we go over 10 of the many, many things that EMDR has positively impacted in my life, how it's allowed me to change my mindset and made me perform a lot better in court, at work, as a parent, etc. I tried to sum it up in 10 impacts because it makes for a better episode title. But if you listen closely, there's a lot more than 10 going on. Okay, so please start with episode 17 if needed, because that's where I describe what EMDR is. I talk about traumatic memories versus bad memories, and I really lay the foundation for this episode. If you don't know what EMDR is and how it works, maybe loop back to episode 17 and then come back here to episode 18. If I were to rank the impacts in order of importance, I think the biggest impact was the fact that I was finally able to talk about what was done to me. I was able to use the exact words to describe the actions and events, and to do so calmly and professionally. There was zero traumatic response anymore when I would talk about it. I wouldn't get agitated. I wouldn't freeze. I wouldn't try to be funny. I wouldn't be fawning. That's really, I think, the number one fruit of EMDR. It shuts off the trauma responses since it handles the trauma. You will see throughout the 10 impacts of EMDR on my life how fruitful it has been that those trauma responses have gone. Please make sure to stay until the end of the episode for the most important impact that EMDR has had on the course of my life, and most likely the reason you're here listening to this episode. Okay, the first impact I noticed of EMDR on my life was in how I advocate for my child. When I'm in school with the goal of obtaining accommodations for him and advocating for him in a way that nobody's ever modeled for me back in the 80s or 90s, I need to be calm, professional, and be able to speak clearly. If I start to flip out when I sense opposition, or if I start to try and be funny and fun to get my message across to the school principal, I'm going to get zero respect, and there's going to be zero impact and zero accommodations provided for my child. Same when I need to firmly tell someone who's close to me to kindly go fly a kite when it comes to my son's special needs. I can express myself in a more productive manner than I would have in the past. So he gets better advocacy, I get more respect, people get educated, everybody wins. The second impact of EMDR therapy, a concrete application of what I said earlier, being able to talk calmly about what was done to me and to use the exact words to describe the exact events, is, for example, when dealing with police. When you're reporting the events to document them, you may be dealing with professionals that are, depending on the country, because some countries are training policemen and policewomen extremely well on domestic violence, and so they'll be equipped to read through the lines even if you freeze or if you start to get agitated. But in a lot of countries, unfortunately, that's not the case. So you have to be able to do your police report calmly. Stay in your body while you recount the events. Stay on topic, not ramble. Basically, not display the freeze, fight, flight, or fawn. You're sitting up straight in your chair and you can answer the questions factually. The third impact of EMDR on my life was that I discovered my softness, my femininity, my sense of, a deep sense of safety. Once I was able to feel safe because I wasn't constantly on high alert and hypervigilant and ruminating over the things that happened and how that could happen again, I became genuinely softer. I felt safer, and I was able to become more feminine. There's a lot of peace in that, and it was a discovery for me of a whole side of my personality that I did not know was there, because I'd had no other option for all these years than to be, I don't want to say combative, but than to be tough, which is really not the same thing as being strong. I now feel a genuine strength that's a quiet strength that's rooted in that sense of safety, which I didn't have when I had PTSD. So I'm better able to set boundaries calmly and make sure that I remain safe now that I've got this underlying quiet strength. And we'll see later on how that has impacted my relationships. The fourth impact of EMDR was the amount of energy that I saved in my day-to-day. Oh my God. When I'm no longer carrying CPTSD and spending all of my mental resources on being hypervigilant, ruminating, strategically avoiding certain conversations or places, reacting too strongly to certain things, or freezing and then having to come back to earth, or spending all that energy trying to be funny because I'm fawning and I can't really deal with the situation. All of that energy I'm now saving, and I can redirect it to being the best mom I can be, the best worker I can be, the softest woman I can be. it's a much better allocation of my energy. With ASD, I've got a very limited bandwidth. Life's exhausting, okay, to begin with. And so I need to be saving as much energy as possible to allocate it to the areas of my life that really matter. So I became a more regulated mom, and I had more calm to give to my child. I was better able to attune to what was going on with him, to his emotional needs, to invest in his secure attachment. And these are things we talk about a lot in the first 10 episodes of this podcast. We talk about from different angles every time, but the common thread is how we give our children as much calm as possible, despite the trauma, despite the ASD, despite the sensory overwhelm and all that. So they grow up mentally healthy and emotionally healthy. And so with a more regulated mom, it's just a lot easier, okay? There's more calm to give to our children. Before we move on to the fifth impact of EMDR in my life after CPTSD, I'd like to ask you to please leave this show a 5-star review. I'm very happy to be providing all this content that I would have needed so bad a few years ago, and to share with you the shortcuts and the tips that have worked for me. But I do need you to follow and leave reviews and comments, because that's what actually pushes the content upwards in the algorithm. Thank you so much. The fifth impact that I noticed after EMDR was the levels of sensory overwhelm as an autistic woman. I'm a sensory avoidant, raising a sensory seeker. Okay, so the combo between the two is brutal. And so if I'm less startled, if I'm less triggered by sounds and noises and the rocking and the pacing and all the things that happen around me, that makes that combo easier to navigate. Noise has not stopped causing pain for me. It's not suddenly become enjoyable all of a sudden, but it no longer makes me dissociate or leave. And so I'm able to stay connected with my child. Something we talked about in episode 13, how we stay connected with our children as an ASD parent who's easily getting overwhelmed on the sensory level. That starts to shift after EMDR. It did for me anyway. The sixth impact I've observed after EMDR is that I wasn't fawning anymore. And I'm talking about this, I'm making a whole sixth point about fawning, because to me, it is the same thing as masking in autistic women. So the sixth point should really be, I'm now able to start unmasking. So we spend our lives, especially as women, fawning, masking, trying to please everybody, trying to perform in a way that's not representative of who we are, that doesn't match our needs, does not serve us, and doesn't genuinely connect us to people, because that's just not who we truly are. And once you've done your EMDR, you don't feel that need to fawn anymore. It's become a lot easier for me to start my unmasking journey after EMDR, because fawning doesn't come so easily anymore. I've got that quiet strength that I mentioned earlier. I don't feel the need to please everybody anymore, and I can unmask safely. To me, fawning, the trauma response of fawning in autistic women makes you keep your mask on. And so you see how EMDR has, the fruits of EMDR have really compounded together. Because if you get rid of the fawning trauma response, which I am convinced in autistic women is the same thing as masking, then you can start showing up as your genuine self, because you've got that sense of safety I talked about earlier. So that's pretty exciting. The seventh impact of EMDR was that physical, mental, and emotional sensation that Shrek had loosened his grip over me. Shrek has left the building. Oh, Shrek's an image I used in episode 17. Sorry. He's the guy who gets in the driver's seat when I'm triggered and starts making all the decisions for me and makes me act a fool, and I just don't control it. So that sensation that the CPTSD has loosened its grip, I can now uncover entire areas of who I am that were covered by the fog in past decades. I catch myself responding to situations in new ways. And that's how I was able to get all the way to a point of total forgiveness. Okay, stay with me. Forgiveness, not reconciliation. That's something we will be talking about in episode 19 next week. It has freed me from the anger, the resentment, the impact of that tension on my body. I didn't need to hold on to it anymore as a potential fight response, ready to go, ready to defend myself. And so this in turn means that I can help others without my own anger getting triggered. I'm a more helpful member of society without CPTSD, without Shrek calling the shots for me. I was able to achieve forgiveness, and I can help others now without getting triggered by what I see, read, and hear. The eighth impact is my ability to surrender. Once you're able to talk about what was done to you and to think about it with a lot more distance, because you're not reliving it right now. Your brain doesn't think that because you're talking about it, it's happening again right now. No. It's a bad memory. There's a lot more distance. And so you can get all the way to a point of total surrender to your situation. To me, it sounds like this. This is shit. And that's okay. Okay, I'm keeping it real over here. Whereas before, it was more like, maybe if I hold my breath and hide in a corner, it will go away. Or maybe if I fight this situation hard enough, I can control the outcome. Or let's see if I can make this person laugh with my uber developed sense of sarcasm, because my situation sucks so bad. I need human connection and I don't know how to achieve it. So I'm going to try and be funny. No. Now it's more peaceful. It's all of this sucks. It does. I will have to give my opponent time and multiple opportunities to misbehave some more so I can prove a pattern. It's not fun for me. It is impacting the kids, and that's okay. It's necessary for a better future. Stay with me. This level of surrender is something we're going to be talking about later on in this season. It has been a game changer for me in how I handled my whole legal battle, which, by the way, will never end, as you probably know if you're listening to this. And that's another thing I've surrendered to, by the way, is there will always be another hearing. There will always be another strange accusation, strange grief, and surrendering to that, which has reminded me, by the way, that God holds everything in the palms of his hands. There's so much freedom in that, and I could not see this with raging CPTSD. I couldn't see it. Huge impact of EMDR for me, that ability to surrender. The ninth impact that I observed in my life was the quality of my relationships. So first of all, like I said, because I became softer, there wasn't that toughness in the way I would behave to people, especially more masculine people in my life. If I'm not coming across as a woman who's trying to be tough and always ready to raise my voice and argue or debate with them about everything. And I can just be softer. I'm still going to have an opinion, but I'm going to communicate it in a more firm, feminine manner with that quiet strength. And so the quality of those relationships has skyrocketed. Masculine men respond a lot better to a soft, feminine, inspiring, yet firm energy. And they'll want to protect that and provide for that. But that's a whole nother conversation. We'll maybe make a whole season about that later. And another thing about the relationships is once you're able finally to tell your loved ones, your safe people, the people you trust, about what happened. Exactly. They can finally feel that empathy for you. For me, there was many years that went by without me being able to name what happened. And so I think the people that loved me, they took for granted that the PTSD wasn't just coming out of nowhere. Okay, there had to be a reason. But they hadn't measured the gravity of what had gone down until I was able to name it and talk about it and use the exact terms for it. And so those levels of empathy and connection, genuine connection with people, they're entirely different after you can talk about it with your safe people again. And so you're able to engage in what Renee Brown talks about when she talks about vulnerability for connection. You're a lot better to do that after EMDR. You can be vulnerable. You've got that strength and that softness. You feel safe while talking about it. And so you're connecting with people genuinely a lot better. Please remember to follow the show before I give you the juiciest 10th impact. Following the show is how you'll be able to catch the entire season 2. I'm taking you on a journey. The 10th impact of EMDR on my life was in my legal battle. None of the advice my lawyer was giving me in how I should behave was landing when I was angry and reactive and trying to control the outcomes. So before the surrender, before the forgiveness, before Shrek had left the building, none of his advice was landing. I started to get it after EMDR. So before you even walk into court, in the months leading up to that date, there are angry emails that you should not be sending, text rants that you should not be sending, triggered behavior that you should not let the other side see in video, because it will make you look like you're just as high conflict as they are. And when you're in family court, you're talking to a judge and you're trying to talk about what happened and you have not worked on your trauma, you will most likely be unable to describe the events without freezing or without getting agitated. The problem with getting agitated is in court. Courts are not trauma informed. They're not therapists and they're not trying to be your friends. Okay? So all they'll do is perceive you as emotional and unstable. Therefore, you will be perceived as the unsafe parent, while the other person, because of their personality traits, is perfectly capable of showing up as calm and collected. You don't want that to happen. You're trying to protect your child. You want to show that you are the safe, stable parent. So don't be Shrek in court. Don't be Shrek in front of a judge. Don't be Shrek over email. Just don't. And you likely won't if you do EMDR. If it's, if your story is anything like mine. Okay? So you'll stay calm over there all the way. You'll collect what you need to collect to prove what you need to prove. Your opponent will smell that indifference. They can't handle it. And so you let them flip out and lose their shit either over email or in front of the judge. And that can be a way that you show to the court on which side the high conflict behaviors reside, truly. So get your butt in trauma therapy, whatever that looks like for you, whatever your licensed therapist, trained professional person determines is the best approach for your PTSD or CPTSD. Please do that like yesterday, please. I said in episode 17 that I would tell the world about the impact of EMDR in my life until the day I die. And maybe now that you've got the list of the things that I've observed that have radically changed my life, that makes more sense to you. It just got that mud out of my system. One memory at a time. And over the course of a year, you can clean anywhere between 2 and 4 traumatic memories. But then it compounds. It's the strangest thing. You'll clean a memory, like a specific memory from your childhood, something that happened with, I don't know, at school, whatever. And then you'll see, once you've done the sessions for that memory, you'll start to notice that it's impacting how you react to completely different things. There's very strange ties between things in the brain. So even if you, like in a year, you can do maybe 2 to 4 memories, there's a snowball effect, and there's actually a lot more getting more peaceful in your brain than just these 4 memories. Okay, sorry, that was a sidebar. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm scripting, you guys. I'm sorry. I have so much to talk about. I'm really trying to be impactful and help you. So I'm scripting again. Sorry. Yeah, another thing that I've observed over time was the cumulative effects. You've got the short-term effects of EMDR, which is mainly that the 4 trauma responses are no longer recurring, and all the impacts that can have on your life quite short-term. But then long-term, I'm seeing that it's impacted my feelings about life, my softness, my femininity, my strength, my relationships in the months and the years after I completed EMDR. I'm still picking up on behaviors here and there that are not the behavior I would have had for the first few decades of my life. I'm responding differently. I'm responding. I'm not reacting. Shrek has officially been evicted. I'm in control now. I can think about what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, and come up with an intelligent response. A game changer. Thank you for listening to this episode today. If you suspect that you're dealing with PTSD or CPTSD, and until you can find the right type of therapy that works for you, until you get to that point, you remember to take it one day at a time. Your only job today is to make it until this evening. And then you'll do that again tomorrow and the day after. We will see you next week, and we'll be talking about forgiveness.